All right, so we're going to do things a little bit differently today. Instead of doing our regular news dose, I want to talk about 2025 and some of my expectations for what this year could potentially bring for gamers and also just the future of each of the platform holders. I think in some ways, 2025 is actually shaping up to be a pivotal year for gaming and for game consoles. You know, there are some changes on the horizon, some exciting, some not. But there seems to be an incoming shift for not only how we consume our games, but also for the type of games that gamers are interested in. Now, I do fear that a lot of studios still haven't exactly figured that part out. They might have to learn the hard way, but we'll get into all of that here in a little bit. What I'll do here, though, is that I'll go over each of the big platform holders because they have the most influence in the game industry. And I'll start off with Xbox simply because I think their future is by far the most mysterious and maybe even confusing. I mean, you have to really read the tea leaves to uncover what they have planned for their future because, you know, we've never really seen anything like what they're doing as a platform holder. For as long as gaming has been around, console exclusives have always been a big selling point for, consoles. But here we have Xbox and they're just kind of like, nah, we don't really need a lot of exclusives. We'll still have some, but we have Game Pass, and we're going to go against history and do our own thing. It's a very unorthodox plan. It's something that we haven't really seen before. And if anything else, it'll be interesting to see if they can find success by doing this, because there is a lot of money in putting your games pretty much everywhere. So we'll kind of see how all this turns out for them in the long run. But I think their long-term plan could actually be very intriguing. More on that here in just a moment. But when I look at 2025, it reminds me a little bit of last year where it just kind of feels like their consoles are stuck in a bit of limbo. They're not going to sell as many consoles as their competitors. But I think for most people who are already invested into Xbox, those are the ones that are really going to have a good time in 2025. I mean, Game Pass is going to have a big year with games like Fable. They have The Outer Worlds 2 around the corner. There's Doom the Dark Ages, South of Midnight, possibly Everwild. There's rumors about an Oblivion remake, and you can also peg Call of Duty for another yearly release. It's still kind of crazy to think that that's available in Xbox Game Pass Day 1, but it is. Now, we should hear about some of this at their upcoming Developer Direct, which could be announced within the next few weeks. That's where they're going to kind of reveal all of the different release windows that they have for 2025. So, I mean, again, if you're already in the Xbox ecosystem, they actually do have an exciting lineup for 2025. But I think that's where their future is really fascinating. The most mysterious part about Xbox is their console business, and by all indication, despite their more multi-platform approach, they still have multiple consoles in development, which includes a first-party handheld for the first time ever in Xbox history. And I think their next consoles and how they approach them could actually really surprise people. I think for Xbox's next console, they're going to try to blur the line of what's a PC and what's a console. They're going to combine the two experiences into one. I mean, when you look at something like the Steam Deck as an example, it falls into that territory as well. It's technically a Linux-based PC, but it feels like a console experience. And from everything that we've heard, it sounds like Microsoft wants to do the same thing with Xbox, but instead with a Windows angle. They want to be able to boot their next console into an Xbox OS, but by having access to Windows, it would theoretically have access to other PC storefronts as well, which includes Steam. So that could potentially be a major shakeup for how we view consoles, and it could actually be a very welcome choice for consumers. You know, PC is still a growing platform. It continues to grow year in and year out. And if Xbox were able to combine Xbox and Steam together for a single console-like experience, there could actually be some genuine interest in a product like that. And I think we will hear more about this plan throughout 2025. Maybe not necessarily from Xbox specifically, but I fully expect more of their plan to leak out ahead of a potential 2026 launch. Now, as for their biggest competitor being PlayStation, I'm expecting more of the same from them in 2025, as we've seen from them under Hermen Hulst's direction. Basically, they'll have a couple big third-person blockbusters, and they'll at least have one new live service game, if not more. We'll also see more PS5 Pro enhancements as the year progresses, and in fact, GTA 6 could potentially be a selling point for the Pro, depending on if it gets a Pro enhancement. I mean, that could be a big selling point for the Pro if they advertise it. But what I think Sony's going to do is that I think they'll come out with a showcase in the early part of the year and confirm a few of their exclusives. Now, some of that's going to be from first party, some of it's going to be for third party, but I think the 3 games that I'm most expecting to hear about are Ghost of Yotei, the leaked Venom game by Insomniac. They were previously targeting 2025, and then there's Fair Games. Now, that's their next big live service game, and this is a part of the shift that I was talking about earlier. I don't think a lot of these developers have completely figured it out yet. Maybe they got into the bandwagon a little bit too late, but I think live service games like this are trending out of favor for gamers. I feel like for any developer who's working on a live service project, if it's not a new original concept that can stand tall on its own, then you need to be on high alert because gamers aren't exactly buying into these type of games anymore. And when I look at Fair Games, they haven't shown enough of it yet for me to completely just come to a definitive conclusion, but there's not exactly a lot of buzz for this game, and I think that's because its initial trailer came off as just another generic live service game. So they're going to need to change people's mind about Fair Games to avoid another Concord type of situation. I mean, I don't think gamers necessarily have a lot of confidence in Sony when it comes to these type of games. Sony tends to be great when it comes to single player, but they're much more miss than hit when it comes to live service titles. And I think that's where I question modern day Sony a little bit. I think as a hardware manufacturer, they're going to do a great job and they're going to sell a lot of units as usual. But I do question Jim Ryan and an extension Herman Hulst's vision for PlayStation's future as a first-party developer. They've really shifted them over to this live service direction, and I think that it's kind of set them back a bit. I do miss the days of them taking more creative risks, and I'm not necessarily super confident about their more live service focus. Now, they are celebrating their 30th anniversary this year, though, so it would actually be a perfect time to revive some dormant IP that we haven't seen in a long time. So I'm crossing my fingers here that we're going to get some surprises here in the next few months. But for the most part, I'm expecting more of the same from Sony. We'll get a few big blockbuster games with at least one new live service game, if not more. Now, I went ahead and saved the most exciting for last, though, because I think Nintendo has the most exciting plans for 2025. I mean, really, anytime there's a new console on the horizon, that's always exciting news, especially after just how long fans have had to wait for the Switch 2. It's finally time for the Switch successor, and I'm fully expecting it to be a big upgrade compared to the original Switch. By all indication, it'll at least be as powerful as the base PS4, maybe even closer to the PS4 Pro, but with newer technology like modern AI upscaling. So, I mean, this could potentially be the biggest graphical leap for a Nintendo-based console since the Nintendo 64 to the GameCube. And that could be huge for franchises like Zelda, Metroid, Pokemon, or even Xenoblade. These are all franchises that could majorly benefit from a graphical point of view. I mean, we know what Nintendo can do from a gameplay standpoint. They are among the very best. But it'll be really interesting to see how they utilize this extra power for their first-party games. And that's the most exciting part about the Switch successor. Graphics alone doesn't make a great console. You can have the most powerful console in the world, but that means absolutely nothing if you don't make good games that also have good gameplay. It's always about the games and their gameplay. And the thing about Nintendo is that they've been a little quiet these past few years. I mean, if you look at 2024, it seemed fairly obvious that they were in the midst of a transitional year. I mean, they released some good games, don't get me wrong, but they were a little bit smaller in scope. They released a few remasters like Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door and Luigi's Mansion 2, and then a few newer games like Princess Peach Showtime and Mario and Luigi Brotherhood. Now again, those are great games, but they haven't really had a lot of big games these past few years, and I think that's because they were preparing for an exciting lineup to kick off their next console. I mean, they could be saving up games like the next big 3D Mario game in 2025, maybe Mario Kart 9. There's rumors of a new 3D Donkey Kong game. There's Metroid Prime 4, Pokemon Legends ZA, and possibly even more surprises along the way. Nintendo may have saved up some really good games for this year, but it's not just their first-party lineup That's just so exciting. I fully believe that Nintendo is going to have a monstrous year for third-party ports. Games like Yooka-Laylee, Metaphor ReFantazio, and Persona 3 Reload are pretty much bound to be a part of their 2025 lineup. And I think that's just scratching the surface of what they're going to have to offer throughout 2025. I think Xbox is going to release some games for Nintendo in 2025. I think Square Enix has plans with games like Final Fantasy VII Remake and the long-rumored Final Fantasy IX Remake. And I think Capcom, they're going to have some surprises as well. And these are just 3 of the many publishers that are going to bring games over to Nintendo in 2025. I think we're going to see more AAA games for a Nintendo platform than we have seen in probably a decade plus. These games might not look as good as what they will on the Xbox Series X or the PlayStation 5, but having them available on a handheld console is going to make them a very enticing option. And that's my final prediction. I think the biggest shift for the game industry right now is for gaming handhelds. We've already been seeing it. Nintendo started this trend back in 2017 when they released the Switch, which is officially the 3rd best-selling console of all time, and it's still climbing. I mean, if that doesn't tell you what type of interest there is in a device like this, I mean, I don't know what will. We've also seen PC gaming handhelds, though, come in and have a lot of success. Devices like the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, and the Lenovo Legion Go have all proven what this type of technology is capable of. And all of these devices have also proven the desire for these mobile gaming experiences. So the Switch 2 will continue to do what Nintendo did this generation. The Switch 2 will be another resounding success for Nintendo, and with just how fast this technology is evolving, it's only a matter of time before Xbox and PlayStation comes out with their own versions as well. Gaming handhelds are going to be a huge, huge part of the future. And I think 2025 and the next 5 years is going to be very exciting for this type of technology. If you like handhelds, we are currently living in the golden era of handheld consoles. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. I just wanted to kind of talk about all of this today, but let me hear your thoughts about 2025 and beyond. Let me hear your predictions in the comments below. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.